Greetings and salutations, my fellow Jelly Belly Jelly Beans. It is I, Eric J. Chucky, joined as always by the boy.
Hey!
This is the Two Nerds Podcast, and 5 to 6 years ago, we brought you an episode entitled Our Top 10 Favorite Fictional Characters. With the typical caveat we do when we do top 10 lists of all time at this point in time that we happen to remember.
Yeah, basically. Even bigger caveat is that as a person, I don't really think like this anymore.
Sure.
So, like, even the ordering, barring a couple, is very up in the air depending on the day of the week.
I like thinking like this because I like knowing things about myself.
Oh, yeah, it's very interesting to see what I had listed back in 2015 when we did this, and two, to see when I took a second and to like really order things where my brain went. But like, it's not something this is not a ranking I'm married to.
Sure. But I was more speaking of the fact that, you know, a lot of people use these as just sort of egotistical, like, these are my things. And I don't mean that as, you know, a bad thing.
No, I'm egotistical. I like looking at the things that I do.
Sure, but I also like knowing things about myself. And even if it's a stupid question like, what's your favorite condiment? It forces me to stop and think and assess my preferences and go, what is my favorite condiment? But I stumbled across this video again when I was looking for video topics about a month ago.
That we hadn't done yet, because
Yeah.
we've been doing this podcast since 2013. There's not many of those.
Well, and I don't know if y'all have noticed, but there's a pandemic going on outside still, and we haven't exactly been watching a lot of new movies and stuff like that. So I wanted some new things. You know, 2019 was the year of D&D. 2020 was the year we did all of the movie homework podcasts.
Catching up on our homework, yeah.
What is 2021? And I think it's going to be top fives.
Because 10 sounds exhausting at this point in my life.
But we will be opening and closing with the top 10. The opening is sort of a review and a soft update. We just kind of want to talk about what's different about us as people, that we made these decisions back then, and how we feel about some of these older characters. And I don't see this so much as a new list, but more like calling our shot.
Yeah, because we're going to do a top 5 for a bunch of stuff. At least that's the plan. So at the end of this year, we're going to revisit this top 10 to see if shit has changed.
Yeah, because we're going to do top 5 for like favorite Marvel character, favorite Star Wars character, and so on and so forth. So it's going to have us analyzing our decisions.
And giving more time to the various other characters in these franchises that we love so much because we're nerds. Giving time to other characters that we like a lot that just might not be good enough to make it onto the big board, as it were.
Sure. So without further ado, let's get started. Let's start with some marching orders here. In 2015, for number 10, I had listed Cole from Dragon Age Inquisition. You had listed Hardy Hackett from a book called Colt Regan Fortunate Son, which you can buy in the description, along with the rest of them.
And
while we're here, you can also sub to the Patreon. I don't ask for much. Anything will help. And if you do, I'll shout you out on the show, like I'm about to shout out Rob. Thanks, Rob. We appreciate your contributions. Rob's been supporting me, like, you know, showing his support for me, I should say, for like 20 fucking years. And that's incredible. I am always deeply honored by that.
you are one of the few people who has me beat at this point, Rob. I don't want to ever take that title. You're always welcome here, and I will do the meme. Rob is good.
So yeah, I had chosen Cole from Dragon Age. You had chosen Hardy Hackett.
Yeah. Side note, that hasn't changed. Hardy Hackett is still my favorite character from that book, and that book is still my favorite book. And I've read a lot of fucking books,
which is a deep honor. But I do kind of want to still play it a surprise here a little bit if we can. But obviously, because of the nature of the discussion, we're gonna have to kind of jump around. So you've moved Hardy Hackett to number 9. Why is that?
Basically, it's I'm almost exactly as fond of him as I was. I have read Fortunate Son again in the intervening years, which, if you've listened to enough of the podcast, you know is fairly high praise. I don't reread books. I can't stand it for the most part.
Even when he's doing beta reading, it's like pulling teeth. So.
My memory isn't as good now, so I'm hopeful that that'll change.
Forgetting what the fuck happened is a great reason to want to do stuff.
Because I used to not be able to do that. So, but I'm almost exactly as fond of him. It's just that there's more space beneath him at this point. A lot of the characters that I was fond of, I had to cut them. I had to cut them for one reason or another. Sometimes not because of the characters themselves, but the things that happened around them. Sometimes because of what happened with the characters after they were on the list previously.
Yeah. And we'll go into that as we reach those characters. I cut Cole from Dragon Age because he shouldn't have been on the list in the first place.
It was just something you had recently experienced.
That's part of it, and the other part is I literally forgot to add some of my favorite characters of all time.
Yeah, you just sort of, he's number 10. It was just fine, this.
Yeah, I guess this guy. I do still like Cole. I think he's a cool character.
He's a fine character, but I felt it was a little weird at the time, if memory serves.
You mentioned, if not on the podcast, then off of it. Now, my number 10 is actually Batman. And that's sort of we'll throw Batman here. He was on my first list at number 5. And your number 10 at now?
Is Nebula from the MCU. Last time I did this list, I just generally listed characters from like where they are generally, if there's many interpretations. No, it's specifically MCU and Nebula.
She's very different from her comics counterpart.
Yeah, and look, some of this is probably recency bias. We just watched Guardians 2 today. But most of it isn't. Most of it is that Nebula is a character with an amazing character arc that goes all the way through Endgame. And only gets better every time she appears. Her actress has amazing range, and there are parts of her story that I get a little verklempt about because I relate to them very deeply, and I'm not going to go into more detail than that on the podcast. This is a happy place.
It is a delightfully happy place. I like Batman, but not as much as I used to. And that doesn't mean I don't like Batman. I think I just like other stuff more.
And that's, I understand that. Yeah. I really do. Like, there's people on this list who moved up or down just because, not because my feelings for them have changed.
Right.
But because, much like Hardy Hackett, my feelings about the rest of the world have changed around them.
Sure. Okay. So, in 2015, the number 9 slot, for you had Michael Carpenter from the Dresden Files. For me, I had the boss from Metal Gear Snake Eater. And Severus Snape tied.
Yeah, you went for a cheaty number 9.
Why bother? I'm not quite in the fuck Snape camp, but I've lost a lot of the romance about the Harry Potter series for a number of reasons.
You will find. We'll get there.
I mean, I will add my 2 cents in now just to keep it brief.
It's where it belongs.
I don't. The fandom ruined it for me, and that sounds mean. I don't mean it quite that way. Just the overexposure to every single piece of it. And then on top of that, like...
No matter how much you like a song, if you hear it 4 million times.
On top of that, every addition J.K. Rowling has made to that universe since then rings hollow at best.
And, like, undercuts the quality of her previous world building.
Yeah, it just sort of takes the whole thing in the toilet. And it's one of those things, too, looking back at Snape with an adult's eyes, in modern thinking. His noble sacrifice isn't quite as good. I guess, fridge logic stuff.
Yeah, fridge logic. I got some troubles with Snape that I did not have when I was a teenager. I have hopefully become a better person, and in that light, he looks like a much worse one.
And maybe that's it. Like I don't like dwell on it. I'm not like I don't meme on the guy. I find
no. I mean, one. It's very different if you're talking about movie or book. Alan Rickman's portrayal of the character is very different from the character in the book.
Sure.
But it's not worth belaboring.
As for the boss, I think a better and more subtle version of this character catapulted her off the list.
That's absolutely fair, and I think I know who you're going to be talking about.
For you, Michael Carpenter is still on your list, and we'll mention it again when we get there, just for completionist sake, but you have moved him all the way up to 2.
Yep. I can't remember when I actually read this. It was probably before that, but I have reread the Dresden Files, probably the most out of any books I've ever read. And every time I catch something new that I love about this character. It's ridiculous, to be perfectly honest. Michael Carpenter is one of my favorite, is one of the best written characters, because he's something that it is incredibly hard to get right. He's a good man. That's so hard to do in fiction. It's because it's just something you so rarely see in real life. He is a true representative of a ethos and a moral system that the true representatives of are very worthwhile people. And it's him swinging around a cool sword and being a mighty warrior are literally my least favorite parts about him. I don't dislike them. They're really cool, but that's not what makes me love him.
My brain did a big fuzzy just then. I'm sure we'll talk more about him at the end of the year when we do the reunion podcast.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if he was removed from your list.
I'm gonna Bambino that. If he's not gonna get removed, if anything, he's gonna move up a slot.
Your number 9 we already discussed. My number 9 is Hank Hill, who was previously on my list at number 2. I think again, a deeper, more nuanced version of this character bumped Hank down. And also, I forgot about a bunch of characters I really loved the first time around. But, like, if you take the boss and you take Hank...
and you mix them, you get a very specific character.
So let's move on to number 8. You had Tali Zora Voss Normandy from Mass Effect. I had Freya Crescent from Final Fantasy IX. Tali has not moved on your list.
Not one single point, no.
We will discuss her more in the future, I think is safe to say.
Yeah.
Freya has removed from my list at this point. I don't know if she'll come back. I do like her a lot. I think she's got a really great, I might even say underrated arc. But it's just characters I feel like I like better at the moment. We'll see where we are in a year.
Yep.
I would explain the tragedy of her story here, but like, I don't want to bother belaboring. You can go back to the previous video, enjoy the cringe of us from 6 years ago.
Please don't.
And see what I have to say there. Number 8 for me now is The Mandalorian from The Mandalorian. He takes a lot of tropes about characters that I really like and does them very well. And I think the medium is a big part of it because, you know, a lot of the praise that was lauded to... I can see his face, but I can't think of his name. The actor who played V for Vendetta.
Hugo
Weaving. Thank you very much. Praise was heaped upon him for acting without showing his face, and I would argue that this is even better.
Look, Pedro Pascal has collected plaudits for being able to put through a character through a mask. Very deserved ones, but he's not hurting for praise on this one.
No, yeah.
Very deserved. Like, absurd.
I'll go into more detail about him at the end of the year. I have to imagine he'll still be on the list, but suffice it to say, an incredible performance that takes things I like from other zones of fiction and has combined them into a very solid character with a very good arc. And as we said, yours is the same. So let's move to number 7. Yours at the time was Albus Dumbledore from the Harry Potter series. Mine was the Elusive Man from Mass Effect. I did a lot of game doubling up.
You did.
But Mass Effect had a pretty big impact on me. I still think the Elusive Man is a fantastic character.
Oh, agreed.
This is just another result of like, well, there's only 10 slots.
Yeah, if there's a very similar character, not the Elusive Man, who is, spoilers, not on my list, who I think is a better version of him, at least for the parts of the character I like, which is Dutch Vanderland. And the only reason Dutch isn't on my list is because there's 10 slots.
I think I'd like the Elusive Man more than Dutch, but only because of, but I can.
You know what? That's absolutely fair.
Like,
It's just so pure.
Dutch never had that moment.
Nope.
And I think it just the manic frenzy of
that moment is
ego.
very important.
Yeah, it's so important, and the acting is also worth mentioning. But anyway, Dumbledore, he's gone.
Yeah, he's not on the list anymore.
Snape killed him.
Yeah, pretty much. The Harry Potter series was very formative for me. I don't think I'll ever not love it, but I'll probably never bother absorbing anything from it again.
I think that's a fair thing to say about me. It wasn't formative. I was in my teens when I read it, well into my 20s when I finished it, obviously. But I still like it.
It's fine. I just I'm not gonna hiss if it's on the TV or whatever.
Sure.
But I'm never gonna go back and read the books again. And it's largely Joanne. Aside the things unrelated to her work, aside that entirely, everything she's done with her material, everything she's added since the main series has ended, has made the main series worse by reflection. And I know there is a school of thought that that's not possible. The original books still exist. You can still get them. So it's not like they can't, death of the author, they can't unmake them. And that's true to the people who believe it, I'm sure. But for this, it was so formative for me that it's not really true. Every example of the stuff she's added later has undercut the firmament of the world building that I loved.
If I may, last week the new Walker series started, starring Jared Padalecki as Cordell Walker. I grew up with Chuck Norris as Walker on his show Walker, and again, the personality of the individual aside, that's the character, So first of all, Jared's got that going against him because he's working to even taking the memes away, a monolith of action herodom. He might take the bronze medal when compared to your Schwarzeneggers and Stallones, but he's still up there.
He's still on the podium.
He's on the pantheon.
He's on the Rushmore.
Exactly, yes. And Jared also has working against him that for 15 fucking years he played Sam Winchester.
The lesser Winchester.
I remember when, man, I'm bad with nouns tonight. Southland Tales came out. A lot of people couldn't believe it, and I don't want to spoil Southland Tales on the podcast because I know people who listen that I'd like to see Southland Tales. People didn't believe Stifler as the role he was playing because he was Stifler before. And that's a thing that can work against you.
It's called typecasting. It happens.
Sure, and just that inability to separate a character from what you've seen them as previously. Now, I don't really have that problem. I think I had it for a brief period in my late teens, early 20s, but I was able to watch Jared play Walker, and he felt like Walker, not Sam in a cowboy hat. By that same token, or rather the other side of it, it's hard to read the Harry Potter books and go, oh, Ron was walking through the halls where wizards just shat all the time and whisked it away with magic. God damn it, Joe, god damn it!
And so much other, much like the entirety of the sequel. I think it's that it's not a reboot. If there was a Harry Potter reboot where they changed a bunch of stuff, I wouldn't have affected my love of the original books. The movies, notably, never really affected my opinion on the books at all. Different medium.
Mm-hmm. Adaptation and all that.
Adaptation. I think that wouldn't bother me. It's that all of the stuff she has added is, at least nominally, in the same canon, in the same continuity as the books.
Yeah.
Specifically, I think the thing that did it was The Cursed Child, which is supposed to be a direct sequel, and it is awful. So, that hurt. But I don't want to go over that.
Sure. I already spent a lot of our time talking about Walker.
Who is, I don't think, on this list.
No, not on this list. Just a fine character, not an amazing one. We were talking about Albus Dumbledore at
number
7. So, hey, your number 7 seems pretty neat.
My number 7 for 2021? Oh, yes, it's Din Djarin, otherwise known as the Mandalorian from The Mandalorian. I pretty much mirror your thoughts. I imagine we'll speak more about him when we get to the, I'm going to guess, Star Wars section of the top 5s.
Yeah, if not that, then the end of the year, I'm sure.
And he's just got an amazing character arc. He is a great study into what it looks like when someone has to wrestle with having a conflict between what they personally between what's personally important to them and what they were raised to believe would be important to them. And that's a really hard arc to nail without coming across as tone deaf, and they did it.
My number 7, drum roll please. Don't actually drum on the desk. It makes horrible feedback.
I wasn't gonna.
Arthur Morgan, the man who bumped off the boss and bumped down Hank Hill.
Because he is the boss plus Hank Hill.
Yeah. I was not as overwhelmingly delighted by Red Dead Redemption 2, as I believe I've outlined previously on the podcast. If not, Nakey Jakey did a video you can watch about it.
They basically 100% agree.
I have more nitpicks, if I'm being honest, but Arthur's character shone through to the point that he inspired me to play a character in a role-playing game. And, like, I have to really like someone or think the idea is fucking hilarious for me to do that. And it was the former. He's going to be on one of our lists at the end of the year, I'm sure. Just spectacularly written.
Spectacularly acted.
Yeah, the acting's fantastic.
It is an amazing story of a bad man trying to be better. It is the most aptly named game.
It's kind of a theme here.
Yeah.
Listener, I think we might have some damage.
I know you, boy.
You're a good boy. It's all right.
That's the reference I was making.
We can both make references.
Yep. All right. So number 6?
Number 6. Your number 6 is Steve Rogers, also known as Captain America from the Marvel Comics.
Yep.
And mine is Garrus Vakarian from Mass Effect. That's mine that didn't change. That's interesting.
Garrus hasn't even moved.
Nope, he's right there at 6.
Him and Tali, bros forever.
Hell yeah. Whereas yours is now Lara Croft from the Tomb Raider reboots.
Yeah, specifically the reboots. I never really gave much of a shit about the Tomb Raider games, the classic ones. I played them. I had a computer that could play games, or had relatives who had computers who could play games. I played Tomb Raider a couple times. It was a fun puzzle game. It wasn't really my thing. I was never really into the pointy tits, which is, I gather, most people in my age range of my gender were. That should have been a flag in retrospect. But anyway. I love Laura's character from the reboots. And it's partially because of a decision that they made way back when they did the reboot in, I think it was 2014 when they did the first Tomb Raider reboot game. I haven't looked this up, so I might have gotten the year entirely wrong. That was very unpopular at the time, which was to take us back to before she was Lara Croft, or Lara Croft.
I mean, it was originally supposed to be Laura, and they changed it, so don't, pronounce it however the fuck you want.
She says Lara. I try.
I say Laura, because fuck everybody.
But when she was a nobody, essentially. A neophyte to raiding tombs and fighting dudes. And, everyone was all up in arms about it, because this isn't the super cool, hard-ass bad girl that they were used to playing. How dare you make her suck and be weak? And I don't believe any of the people who made those complaints played all 3 games in the series. And that is a failing on their part, because they earn it. It takes them 2.5 games, but the reason Lara Croft is on this list is there's a scene in Shadow of the Tomb Raider which is so goddamned good. It is such a perfect apotheosis for the character that I stopped the game, waited for this guy to come home, and then ranted for half an hour in his face about it.
It was a good rant.
I don't want to spend the next 30 minutes ranting about it here. I could, but she becomes, over the course of these 3 games, the Tomb Raider, and it's such an amazingly well done series of events that it's so well done. They earn it so thoroughly. And I really hope they make more games in the series because it's super fun and cool.
2013 was when the game came out, by the way.
Jeez, all right. Fair enough.
You didn't play it until later, so that might
I
be
think I may
what's
have played it in
skewing
2014 or 2015.
But Gareth stayed the same place. He's my space husband. I'll talk about him later. He's not going anywhere. Later, as in December. Or you can go back to the previous podcast and hear me swoon.
Garrus is cool.
Garrus is cool. I have a lot of very deep feelings about the character that I continue to hold to this day.
He's my space bro.
So Steve Rogers was your number 6. Steve Rogers has moved up on your list.
Yep. Right along with Michael Carpenter. A big part of that is as I essentially am no longer as traumatized, troubled as I once was. I like to think I'm more well-adjusted these days, and I don't like edgy media as much as I used to. And much like Michael Carpenter, Steve Rogers is partially on this list because he's a good man. He's trying his best. He's not perfect, and despite what it might appear to people who aren't familiar, who haven't read all the Dresden Files, neither is Michael. Steve's number 3 now because I don't like him quite as much, but he's just a really good person, a man with a moral compass that even if it differs from everyone else, even if the whole world tells you to move, no, you move. And that's the kind of stuff I like in the fiction I enjoy these days. I like optimistic, hopeful stories. And Steve Rogers is that. I narrowed it down specifically to the MCU version because I gotta be honest, the MCU version of Captain America is hands down my favorite version, and at this point in my life, it's not close.
Yeah, no, I would agree. It gave the character depth that...
And an ending, which is so important.
Sure.
I know the reasons comics can't do that, really. But this Steve Rogers gets to retire, and it's an important part of his story.
I do want to touch on something you mentioned. I think it's honestly a big sweeping part of a lot of the changes that have happened to these lists and us as people is... edgier stuff doesn't necessarily appeal to us as much as it used to. Not out of some moral panic, but for me at least, it has finally crossed that line in general. When I see something that looks cool, instead of going, that looks cool and I like it, I look at it and go, can you try a little less hard?
For me, it's... hilariously, I think it's best summarized by a literal line from one of the epic rap battles of history. I know it by heart, and I am actually going to say it as cringe as that is. It's from J.R.R. Tolkien versus George R.R. Martin, and the line is, "We all know the world is full of chance and anarchy, so yes, it's true to life for characters to die randomly. But newsflash, the genre is called fantasy. It's meant to be unrealistic." And then there's an insult towards George Martin being fat. But that sentiment, I don't need more sad stories. I have enough of them on the news.
Yeah, let's watch something that's fun. My number 5 slot was Batman. He moved down. And again, it's nothing like, I don't hate Batman. I think it's 2 things, actually. One, I've discovered so many more unique characters within like comics universes and stuff like that, in fiction in general, that I think are really neat, that like Batman no longer stands up as this monolith of what is cool in a comic book to me.
And that's absolutely fair.
Or a movie or what have you. I still think he's iconic. I still have a lot of fondness for him.
But like, you live in a world of comics where there are so many more iconic characters who haven't had 47 movies and 96 adaptations and have existed since the fucking 30s.
Sure, and that's a part of me as a person, is I like things that are different. I get tired of the same thing sometimes. Especially if it happens too much. And I've got no ill will toward Batman, so, you know.
Yeah, no, it's not anything against the character, it's just... He's working his stiffer competition these days.
Sure,
Bruce.
Yeah. I've added more options to the roster, and that evens things out. Second reason, the the longer time goes on, the more I am fond of my favorite versions of Batman who aren't Batman.
Who aren't Bruce.
Who aren't Bruce Wayne, which is what I mean by Batman. Your number 5 is Arya Stark, and she's fucking gone.
This is, unfortunately, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, or whatever the fuck his name is. I don't remember. I think that's actually literally a different author.
D.B. Cooper and...
The money he took. But...
Woof, did we just do that organically?
Yep. But it's literally down to the guys who did the last couple seasons of Game of Thrones. They have... Look, her character assassination wasn't quite as thorough as Daenerys Targaryen's, but it wasn't a fucking lot short. I don't need to belabor this. I can just say Game of Thrones was the most overwhelming pop culture phenomenon for like a decade. And we're in the middle of a global pandemic that had everyone stuck inside for months, and nobody talked about rewatching it. I think that says everything I need to say.
Our new number 5, shared, is Rocket Raccoon.
Yep. He's at the same spot.
Yeah, how about that?
He's a really fucking... this is the MCU.
The MCU version specifically, yeah.
He's just got such a good character arc.
He does, and he's a great character, and he's fun, and he has growth and change, and he's deep
funny.
and complex. And I've always liked Rocket, but the MCU version of him has elevated him into someone I feel like I can really get behind.
Yep. And not for nothing, I am a person who spent a fair amount of my life being intentionally unpleasant to people in an effort to drive them away because I didn't feel like I deserved to be liked. And I get it.
Same, although a couple years before you got it, I got it.
Yeah.
And my motivations were a bit different, but so yeah, there's that representation matters kind of thing, I guess. I too am a small furry woodland creature.
Triangle-faced monkey.
Yeah. Hey, possums do have triangle faces, so all right. So number 4. For you was the Joker of DC Comics. Number 4 for me back in 2015 was Solus from Dragon Age Inquisition. I still think Solus is a nuanced and interesting character, but for a number of reasons in general, Dragon Age Inquisition has largely vanished from my brain. Part of it is like some personal life shit that went down that just put extra distance between me and the franchise. Part of it is we haven't had another game in a long fucking time. And like the same thing with Mass Effect, that can really kind of make things go away, So
yep.
I still think he's very interesting, and I'm excited to see where his character ends up, but I couldn't call him in my top 10 at this point.
And that's absolutely fair. Mr. J is, spoilers, no longer on my list at all. It's basically just a more pronounced version of what happened with you and Batman. It's just the competition's too stiff.
I'll speak on this as well, briefly, because he's off my list too. He's my number 3 we'll talk about here in a second. I might as well talk about it now.
Yeah.
Especially because you already talked about Steve Rogers, so there's a little bit of give and take there. There was a point in my life where I had enough struggles and I had enough bitterness and I don't want to say anti-authority, but like that kind of young rebelliousness, I guess, that like, yeah, the Joker's cool and the Joker is still cool, but like I no longer wish I was the Joker kind of thing. And
everyone goes through a period in their life where they've realized that we live in a society.
Sure. And the kinds of people that aspire to that now, maybe they were the same kind of people back then. I just wasn't looking around as much.
You were busy being them.
Maybe. Yeah, it's entirely possible. But, like, looking at them now, it seems tedious.
There are 2 stages of that. At one point, you realize we live in a society. And then at a later point, you realize that, unfortunately, that is kind of necessary.
I still like the Joker.
Oh, same. He's a good character. The competition is just too stiff.
Sure.
Mr. J and all his many iterations is a very fun character to watch on screen. He's almost always entertaining. problem is, I just like another bunch of other characters more.
Mm-hmm. Such as our new top threes, as we said before. Steve Rogers is now in your top 3 spot. In your number 3 spot, I should say.
What was my...
Oh, no, wait, hold on. I was talking about my top 3. Excuse me. We're still on number 4. Your number 4, this is where you have Arthur Morgan.
Yep, because I liked Red Dead Redemption 2 a lot more than either you or Naked Jakey. The meme is strong to want to say Naked Jacob, but that's a different YouTuber.
It's a different guy.
But...
You think somewhere out there's an Eric G. Chucky?
I hope
Eric
so.
G. Charles, because no, if you're a Chucky, you're related to me. Hello.
But they really nailed it, and I didn't have nearly as many problems, and I didn't have nearly as many annoyances with the very real problems with this game. So the story was able to come through for me in a much more like untainted by I really hate the mechanics way. And also I think I just like it more than you.
Oh, I agree.
But I will state I'm not going to give spoilers for Red Dead Redemption 2. But there is a scene in Red Dead Redemption 2 that I openly cried during. And that is not something that even now, as a more emotional person than I was in my 20s, at the ripe old age of 32,
Maybe we might as well be dead.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it some days. But, like, this is so well written.
Yeah.
And it's so well acted.
Sometimes the impact the story leaves on you is often stronger than the story itself if it hits you in the right moment.
Yep. And I played this game during a hell of a moment. I'll put it like that.
My number 4 is one of those kind of soft slots. I just kind of tossed this up here because he deserves to be considered. And he's become something more of an icon for me than he was...
Back then.
Yeah, in 2015.
I'm surprised it's not his purple friend, to be honest.
No, I love him, but, like, what character? My number 4 is Luigi. I'm going to go into this now because I wouldn't be surprised if he gets bumped off by the end of the year.
Yeah.
I'll still try to keep it brief because I know we're over our typical
We used to
minimum
do
time.
an hour every week.
We used to, but now we like that sweet, sweet buffer, and we don't have that right now, and what if we could? Luigi, by which I mean, like, Mario's brother from the Nintendo games. I was always a Luigi kid, and I was an only child. It wasn't that I was relegated to player 2. I just liked him more.
Got a better color palette.
He does. That white and green is so fucking crisp.
White and green go great together.
Well, and when I was little, the Super Mario Brothers Super Show was a thing. And the actor Danny Wells reminded me a lot of my dad. And it got to a point where I didn't see my dad as much as I would have liked. So it was a nice sort of surrogate moment. Like, there's Danny Wells. He reminds me of my father. I get to watch him on TV. How comforting. I have a lovely print of a painted portrait of Danny Wells as Luigi hanging above the very computer we are recording on. That actually was released on my birthday several years ago, which was just, what a delightful happenstance.
Nice.
I like Luigi. I like that he's an underdog. I like that he does his best in spite of his fears, and I don't know, just the L-Man. I'm here for him. But, like, he exists as more of an icon than, like, a character. He doesn't have the depth of anyone else below him. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets shifted, if not shifted entirely off the list, come December. So we were talking about number 3s. 2015, as I said, my number 3 was the Joker. We talked about why he's not there anymore. Your number 3 was Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson.
I had them both on there because to me they are an inseparable pair. Neither character is as good without the other.
That's ridiculous. That's cheating. You can't have more than one character in a slot, even if they go together.
Here's the problem. They're gone. They're not on my list anymore.
Is it because you like a happy Sherlock Holmes and legally speaking you're not allowed to enjoy a happy Sherlock Holmes unless you pay the estate of Arthur Conan Doyle a certain amount of money?
I mean, I'd like to say that's it, but no. It's just that, like, there's only so many adaptations of The Hound of the Baskervilles you can watch and read before before the character wears thin, like butter spread over too much bread.
I always liked how the butter was like the star of that
sentence.
Yeah. Just a lot of character building in that.
But they're good characters. I like many of the adaptations, not all, but many of the adaptations of them. But I don't know. They're not my thing anymore. They didn't spark when I went through the list. And I was like, no, they can come off. It wasn't even toward.
No, yeah, I feel that. A lot of the ones I removed. Oh, the cat sneezed. That's adorable. Now she's singing. This is a cat podcast now. My number 3 should have been on my original list. Luke Skywalker from the Star Wars.
What was your old one? Was Joker?
Joker, yeah. When I was a kid, everyone around me loved Han Solo. They wanted to be a badass. They wanted to be a rebel. I liked Luke because he was doing his best.
He's earnest. He's an earnest dude.
Earnest as fuck. And he has dips and struggles. I like how the dark side has influence on him. And I like what that adds to his story.
I like that he's kind of a doof, and he fucks up a lot.
I love it. It's fantastic. And I didn't get into the novels, so I don't have a lot of these preconceptions about what Luke Skywalker should have been in the sequel trilogy. And for that reason, I love the rest of Luke Skywalker's story in the sequel trilogy. I think it caps off the character fantastically. He reflects as a Buddhist figure more than a Western figure, in that he is fallible, in that he thinks and learns and shrugs and goes, well, I guess I was only human. I'm sorry for what happened. The best I can do is to do better going forward. And that's beautiful. Colt, plus he's got a cool green laser sword. He does flips. He's friends with a robot. He's sassy.
Crushes bots with his hands now. That's cool.
He says all kinds of shit. So whatever. I don't know why he wasn't on the first list. Oversight, I guess. Really feeling that Hank Hill vibe. So number 2 on yours in 2015 was Harry Blackstone Copperfield Dresden, my favorite person to make up fake names for.
That is absolutely not true. There are many characters for whom you make up fake names that I like.
Hank Hill was my number 2 in 2015. We already talked about him.
Harry's not on the list. In this case, it is not that I no longer enjoy his oeuvre. It's much more close to the Joker. There's just tough competition. A part of it for me is that I am not amazingly fond with the character's development since 2015. The most recent couple books just came out last year, and while I like I like one of those 2 books. If they were one book, as they clearly should have been, I would like the book anyway. It has some development for Harry's character that I'm not amazingly fond of. That's probably part of it. The other part is it's just really stiff competition in these fields, and he's a really great character, an amazingly well done, flawed character with nuanced flaws as well as over-the-top ones, and an excellent example of someone who's willing to do the right thing even at great personal cost to themselves. And that hasn't changed. I could see him ending up back on the list by December, but for this list, there was just too many other people I wanted to put on here.
Your new number 2 is Michael Carpenter, who we discussed.
Yep.
My new number 2 is the Ninja Turtles from the Ninja Turtles. Why weren't they on the first fucking list? I kind of forgot about them.
I think maybe that was partially you not wanting to do 2 Cheaty slots, and you already had that fucking very important boss Snape pairing.
Sure. God, you know how we talk about how I'd like to reach into the past and slap my previous self around some?
Yeah.
And ordinarily you're like, no, let go of this rage to your former self because it's helped build the person you are today, and you seem proud of the person you are today. And I'm like, yeah, that's fair. This is one of those times I don't think you're going to fucking argue with me.
No, I mean, he deserves a good slap. Me too.
I could and will talk long and hard about the Ninja Turtles.
Yes, that you do that, and that's because they're a very well made archetype, but they absolutely must be listed together.
Oh,
because
yeah.
they don't work separately. They don't work separately.
I mean, they can, but they are always better together.
They're different characters separately.
Sure, yes, they become more of their tropes and go off in different directions. It's interesting, but that is the contrast, not the main thing. Every time my girlfriend calls me and has found some piece of Ninja Turtles merchandise she wishes to secretly purchase for me, she'll say, "Which one's your favorite again?" And every time, like programming that I cannot avoid, I go, "Well, I mean, I like all of them equally. You can't really separate one out, but if you're buying me merchandise, Raphael." Just because I find his conflict with Leonardo more interesting. I feel like he's got more development as a character to go through in general.
If someone were to ask me the same question, it would be pretty much the same answer you gave. But if you're buying me merchandise, Donatello.
You know, I was actually just thinking about that, and I'm like, I could use some more purple shit in my life.
Honestly, that's a big part of it. Also, I mean, for the same reason I liked Billy and the Power Rangers. I'm a nerd. I like the nerd one.
Well, when I was a kid, actually, my favorite was Michelangelo because, you know, I was fun and I liked to
You
have
were
fun.
a goofy kid,
Yeah,
dude.
I was a goofy kid. And then Donatello, once I got to be, you know, in my late youth, early teens. But it's been Raphael since.
Nice.
Ninja Turtles. I will talk about them more in the future. They ain't going anywhere on this list. Let's talk about number ones because they haven't changed.
Nope.
Except that, so 2015 and 2021 of January, yours were Batman, mine were Kefka from Final Fantasy VI.
Yeah, they haven't moved.
I have something to say about mine, but I'd like you to go first. Mostly because you end the show with the things you say, and there's a better balance if you say the thing, and then I say some things, and then you go, everything's better when nerds talk about it, and then we end the show. So
that's a little peek behind the curtain, everybody. So, I mean, I don't know that Batman will ever move.
Yeah.
At a certain point, it's just a matter of, like, you got to do a lot better than just be someone I like reading about more today than Batman to oust him from this seat.
You know, the interesting thing is, I think our top slots are our top slots for a similar reason, and at the same time, no.
I'm interested to hear more about that. But you're gonna have to do a lot better than like, oh, I really am into, you know, reading about this character or watching this thing, or I'm really enjoying Red Dead Redemption. Arthur Morgan's great. You're gonna have to do a lot better than that to oust Batman from the number one slot. You just are. It's a part of my fucking firmament. He is the thing that I thought was cool. And I love so many other characters. I love Spider-Man. I love basically all versions of Spider-Man. There isn't a single version of Spider-Man I've ever seen that I didn't like. I'm including Batman in this for for Terry McGinnis Batman. And because all Spider-Man are good Spider-Man, even Batman Spider-Man. But, like, it's just, and it's not just Bruce Wayne. I love Bruce Wayne. He's a very interestingly flawed character, and the best versions of him portray that. He's not perfect. He's not flawless. He has trauma almost as deep as most of his villains, which is why he works. But I don't just mean him. I mean the archetype. I mean Batman. And there are very few versions of the character I don't like. At this point in my life, I can't even really say I dislike George Clooney. I mean, I probably would be willing to co-sign that sentiment, but it'd be, I don't know. I'm not sure why I was so mad back in the day.
Everything was the end of the world when we were teens and 20s.
Mm.
Everything was a hill to die on.
It's a very good character that has so many different versions. He is, in himself, a smorgasbord of options for what you could be interested in. There's a meme that Batman is every D&D alignment, and yeah, basically. And I like that at this point.
Final Fantasy VI, as you said, is firmament to me. It is foundational. It didn't come around until I was, in my life anyway, until I was about 12, 13. So there's plenty of stuff I experienced before then, the Ninja Turtles included. But it hit the right way at the right time in the right qualities. And I was the right person to receive it despite its numerous flaws. That it became foundational in defining... cat has rubbed the microphone.
You just that was a little highlight from the cat.
Yeah. In defining what I like about fiction, the way it goes about storytelling, the fact that I don't care if you have a plot that goes nowhere so long as it was fun. The plot cul-de-sacs in recent media that are so lambasted. Oh yeah, okay, it's not in the service of anything, but neither was us going to this fucking movie, so shut up and enjoy it. Did you like the pretty lights? Did you like the cool action? Like, maybe I don't like big thriller action movies like your Jason's Bourne, but that obviously lots of people do, and it doesn't fucking matter. Anyway, is Kefka my favorite character of all time still? I think he is representative of what is foundational to me. He's the character I liked the most when this thing that formed so much of the way I digest media and am inspired by media hit me. I could theoretically slot one of about a dozen characters from that game into that place. Only one of them is tattooed on my body. But, there's a reason I started reading Franz Kafka, who is my favorite author. There's a reason I started, getting really into clowns, and it wasn't the Joker, despite him being
very iconic.
Yeah, earlier in my life. There's a reason that I like tragic villains. There's a reason that I loved Age of Ultron, and it's this game and it's this character. So do I look at him and go, "Oh man, that's him. That's my favorite guy. He's the big winner"? No, not necessarily. I'm older now. I'm not edgy. I don't need to be into the villain in that way. But I do look at him and go, you represent everything that is how I interact with fiction today, and I can't take that away from you.
Basically, it's... So, we both used to do a thing, e-fetting. We talked about it before. And there was a school of thought in that to take the belt off, and this is general wrestling as well, to take the belt off the main champion, you have to do more than just do as good as them.
Yeah.
You have to beat them. And that's pretty much it. Batman is so foundational to me, and Kefka so foundational to you.
Yeah, he represents something that's foundational.
That basically the same thing.
Sure.
It's just, you can't... You're going to have to get up pretty goddamn early in the morning to take that slot, and I just don't see anything doing it.
I have had my mind expanded on things like game design and narrative design and so on and so forth by incredible movies or, auteurs or designers or whatever, but none of them have managed to change what I find core to these things. And yeah. So, in December, will I still have Kefka at the top? Not necessarily. Final Fantasy VI will in some way be represented on my list, and it might still be Kefka, and he might still be number one. Who fucking knows? Who gives a fuck? But it was important that now, before we've done all our top fives, that I not move him because of what he represents.
In December, will I still have Batman at number one? I'm gonna keep it real with you, Chief. Probably, yeah. Everything's better when nerds talk about it.